Welcome to a long overdue edition of What the Did I Read? We are going to do a special series of banned books. Now, why am I doing a series of banned books? Am I just jumping on the bandwagon? Sure, we can see that, of course. Also, if you see or hear anything, my cat has zoomies, so we're just going to ignore it. But also, I am a huge lover of books. I love them. And depending on the time that were written, you can kind of get an idea of how it was during those times. As an author, I definitely pick from my own current experiences as I write things, and I don't think that an author has the chance or the ability to not be completely or at least remotely influenced by external factors. We are going to start today with George Orwell, and you guessed it, we're doing 1984. When we go over certain things, you're going to be like, wow, this is why this book was currently banned. 1984 by George Orwell is actually my husband's favorite book. It is not mine. I found it both times that I read it difficult to read. Not quite sure why, but for myself, it was just hard to follow. So, a couple of things you may not know. George Orwell was actually born in Bengal, India in 1903. 1903. And he wrote Animal Farm in 1945 and the 1984 in 1949. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my notes. Actually, why don't we take a look at this? So I have the majority of the books I talk about, well, actually 50-50 are, ebook and physical. But all the books from the banned books edition are going to be both physical and Kindle. And the reason I did Kindle is because it is far easier for me to go through my annotations and what parts I, bookmarked here, so it's easier to have these discussions. Now, I'm covering 1984 first because it is it's one of the more popular ones that have been pointed out for being banned. I think banning books is a real travesty. I think that it removes a lot of the ability for the younger generation to form empathy, common sense, and critical thinking skills. And who knows? Who knows? Maybe that's what they want. I'm not saying that that is what they want. Am I saying that that's what I think? I have suspicions. Let's talk about 1984. We follow Winston Smith, okay? Winston Smith is a 35-year-old man in 1984, okay? So you got to understand that this was written probably like 47, came out in 49, and this is how he imagined 1984 to be, right? Because it was tumultuous times when he wrote this. Think about that. Anyway, so again, Winston Smith is a 35-year-old man, and at 35, he is depressed, he's balding, overweight, with back pain, and an ulcer on his leg. This all comes very clear as we go through the book, and one of the things, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit before I continue. One of the things that we realize is that when he stops taking a shot of his daily gin, which they call his daily medicine, he starts to feel better, right? He doesn't have stomach pain. He starts to feel more energetic. His ulcer starts to heal. And part of that process is because he falls in love with a woman. Now, Winston works for the Ministry of Truth. More specifically, he works in the records department. And what does he do in the records department? What he does in the records department is he rewrites history. That's right. You heard that correctly. He rewrites history. Anything that has happened in the past will and it doesn't agree with the current political viewpoint, then it gets erased and it gets changed. Supposedly, they're in constant war with two other superpowers, but at one point they weren't. And Winston has a vague memory of this because he held a piece of that information in his hand, but he was so scared, right? Because of that saying, Big Brother is watching. He was so scared to say or do anything about it, he got rid of it. But he knows that they weren't always at war with Eurasia. He knows this. He also knows that at one point, what they considered to be the capitalists, they were not always the bad guy. So you see how history can be changed, right? Just with a few words. Let's keep going along those lines, okay? Because one of the things I like to say all the time is that words matter. Words matter. Those that write the words and those that are able to keep them public will generally be the ones who will be able to write the truth, right? They say the winners write the history. I think that this is very, very accurate. So let's talk about words, right? Let's talk about how strong they are. So we already know who Big Brother is. And one of the things that is a constant theme is this poster of this man with this mustache, and the eyes of the poster seem to constantly watch you, right? Constantly watch you. And underneath it, or a constant theme is war is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. So this is what they are taught from a very, very young age. You know what else is not allowed? What's not allowed in George Orwell's 1984 is books and writing. Books and writing. You know, another thing that they do in the Ministry of Truth is they're constantly revamping this dictionary. And they're constantly condensing the words more and more and more. And one of the things they point out is that, isn't it just easier to say the shorter version? Excuse me? Okay. They have something called I think it's 2 Minutes of Hate. And basically, they're showing pictures of the rebels, and they're spewing propaganda, and the people that are watching are expected to be angry and just spew horrible words, and they spit at the TV. They're constantly being watched through the TV. And then they have something called the thought police. And basically, it's, the idea is that these are people that can read your thoughts, so you constantly have to school yourself to not say anything negative about the people running the show. Okay, what else? Let's see. Let's click on something else. Okay. Coughing fit. So remember I said that Winston Smith is chronically ill, right? As he mechanically shot his arms back and forth. So every single morning the TV turns on, wakes them up, and they're expected to stand in front of the TV and do these exercises, right? Or physical jerks is what they call them, okay? As he mechanically shot his arms back and forth, wearing on his face the look of grim enjoyment. In other words, he has to enjoy it, which was considered proper during the physical jerks. He was struggling to think his way backward into the dim period of his early childhood. It was extraordinarily difficult. Beyond the late 50s, everything faded when there was no external records that you could refer to. Even the outline of your own life lost its sharpness. No external records. Even in our current day and age, it is incredibly easy to remove transcripts and of any press conferences, interviews, or meetings, and doctor these videos, especially with how far AI has come, right? Am I saying that this is what's happening? I'm saying I have my suspicions. I'm also saying that George Orwell, was he a visionary? Was he a prophet? I think he definitely, we read this, right? How the powers are constantly warring, the three superpowers. I think we definitely can see a, the remnants of World War One and World War Two in there. I mean, this man and anybody that lived through those wars have got to be shell-shocked, even if they didn't deploy. And the fact that, and the fact, you know, I don't know where I was going to go with that. I might be getting a little flustered. Let's continue. What else do I have? Let's see. Something fun. So remember my main theme here for, talking about George Orwell's 1984 is that words matter, and if you ban books, and you can definitely rewrite the history, right? So one of the things that he says is, if the party could thrust its hand into the past and say of this or that event, it never happened, that surely was more terrifying than mere torture and death. If they say it never happened because they have the Ministry of Truth, right? And then we have the records department, where people are constantly getting information and they're saying, nope, this didn't happen. We're going to change it. We're going to rewrite it. And then they're going to put it out as brand new propaganda for the masses. Think about that. So now we have a certain type of people, right, that don't live where he lives, right? He lives in the buildings that is provided to him. He works in the Ministry of Truth. But we have these people who are technically built for the labor, right? The physical labor. And these are the people that are often prone to revolution and fighting. And so Winston says that they allow these little revolutions, right? These little uprisings, because they have to be able to feel like they're doing something, they're saying something. You see where I'm going with this, right? Let them think that they're doing something, but they're really not. But one of the things that they have in common with Winston's class is no education. Every single person that we encounter is uneducated. All right. So what gets Winston thinking? What gets Winston moving away from the thought of the party? Well, it's a couple of things. One, he, like I said, he ran into a couple of pieces of information. He's like, wait a second. And I think he was already on the cusp of saying, this party is bullshit. But then he meets a woman who is so good at pretending that she is, playing the game, that they start, when he meets with her on the side, you are startled to understand that she is absolutely rebellious. She thinks the party is full of shit, and they fall in love and they have so much sex. Like, this is most definitely something that's constantly putting out, okay? And but he was just so starved for physical attention that I think even if she was a spy for the thought police, he probably would have fallen for her as well. So Julia, though, even though she doesn't agree with the party, so on and so forth, she's also not a thinker. She doesn't like to think, and he's constantly asking her all of these thought-provoking questions, and she's just like, and she just listens, and then she falls back to sleep. But there's no real critical thinking involved where she is concerned, right? I think critical thinking or lack thereof is the key to this. Let's talk about the ending. And this is one of the things that I think is quite indicative of the times that George Orwell was raised in and the times that he wrote this in. And so what happens is Winston Smith does meet with the rebels, right? He is going to be a rebel spy. He wants the party to be taken down. He's tired of living like this. But he's caught and he's taken to the infamous room 101 where he is tortured. And this is where the book got me. It got me. He is tortured, he is worn down, and he gives up Julia. Ugh, he gives her up. Then he submits and pledges his fidelity and love to Big Brother. I don't know what he was trying to say here. And by he, I mean George Orwell. But I can definitely see how if something like this is allowed to go on and continue, then I can see how critical thinking gone, common sense gone, free thinking gone. And even now you see a certain certain type of people who are incapable of forming their own thoughts or doing their own research. And is it their fault? Initially no. But I do give some fault to people who don't form their own opinions when they're adults and they have been through it enough. Gosh, this is very aggressive for one of my what the did I read videos. Wonder what's gonna happen when I go over The Handmaid's Tale, because hell yeah, I did that one. This video doesn't come with any like reviews or anything like that. George Orwell's 1984 has standed the test of time. I think it is an amazing book, though I'm not going to lie, it is a difficult read. We can take some lessons from this book. We can. And I want everyone to sit down and think about that. All two of my viewers.